for more on the delicate situation unfolding in Iran and the other war front in Ukraine. Let's bring in former NSC Chief of Staff for the Trump administration, Fred Fleitz, former Naval Intelligence Officer John Jordan, and Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal Officer Tom Sauer. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us this morning. Obviously, we are remembering the life and legacy of Lindsey Graham. That is the big story. It was an unexpected death, Fred, passing suddenly at the age of 71, shortly after returning from Ukraine, where he just met with President Zelensky. Fred, what's your reaction to his passing?
It's going to be a great loss. Senator Graham was a man of principle. He was a patriot. And he was one of President Trump's most important national security advisors. When Trump needed to get the bottom line of many international issues, he called Graham, or Graham would call him. He's a man of principle who was not bowled over by the growing isolationist movement on the right or efforts by the left to cut off Israel. We're really going to miss him. But I'll tell you, President Trump learned a lot from Senator Graham and will be using what he learned to keep our nation safe.
John, let me ask you, we had another strike yesterday, overnight, hitting more than 140 targets. Iran responding by firing at American military assets across the Gulf. The latest in this escalation of violence. So, the president saying the ceasefire is over. Clearly it's over. What do you see? And does Lindsey Graham's passing have anything to do with some of the policy points and decisions that will be made going forward? But realistically, what is our next military option?
Well, I mean, certainly Senator Graham saw this very clearly. At the end of the day, when you peel all of the layers of the onion aside, separate the wheat from the chaff, the entire ball game here with Iran is about who controls the status of the Straits of Hormuz. If, in fact, all of the strait or half of the strait on the Omani side is free for travel for energy products and cargo ships, that is pretty much the end of the Iranian regime because they have no more leverage there. We can shut off their trade at will. They're diplomatically isolated. They're economically crippled and they're militarily crippled. This will be the end for them. They understand that, whether it's weeks, days, or months. Who's to say? But it's like 1945, the die was cast, even though the war wasn't over technically. So the Iranians are going to fight like hell for this. Now, as for the 140 targets, it's very important that we don't get hung up in some sort of Vietnam era like Bob McNamara did about looking at metrics and benchmarks, how many bombs we dropped and targets we hit. The issue here is the quality of the targets. Are they degrading the effectiveness of the Iranians to reinforce the coastal regions, interdict trade in the Straits of Hormuz, or are we interfering with the regime's ability to govern and control its own people? Because they have a powder keg on their hands with regard to the Iranian people. So it's quality of targets, not quantity of targets, and it's all about trade in the Straits of Hormuz.
That's a great point.
Yeah, we're also seeing a ratcheting up of threats from the Iranian regime. Iran calling for the assassination of Donald Trump just this week, vowing revenge for the killing of their supreme leader and for Soleimani back in 2020. Israel, they shared the intelligence with U.S. officials about a plot to assassinate the president. Tom, how seriously should we be taking these threats?
I think we should absolutely be taking them very seriously. I do know of, I have friends within the Secret Service who tell me that, they're on travel restrictions right now. I also know I'm quite certain that even though it's almost certain that, Lindsey Graham died of natural causes, the intelligence community is going to rule out any possibility of anything happening as a result of foul play or anything like that. And it seems pretty unlikely, but you cannot rule it out, and we need to make sure that we do. So there are very real threats against the president. If you've spent any time in or around the White House, it is more robust security than usual, especially when he's traveling and on the road. So it's one of those things that I'm sure that the Secret Service and our intelligence community is constantly on the lookout for.
Yeah, we also saw the president switch planes coming back from Turkey. He went back to the original Air Force One. Tom Sauer, Fred Fleitz, and John Jordan, really appreciate your insights this morning. Thank you.
Good to be here.